The NBA is looking to drop the term owner for team owners because the term owner is now apparently racist. We will examine the ramifications of this new change from owning small businesses to owning the libs. Then a Grindr hookup goes horribly wrong when a kinky fantasy turns into assault and robbery. That's the sexual revolution for you. The Pope has rewritten the Lord's Prayer, and we look back on 100 years of female suffrage. I'm Michael Knowles, and this is The Michael Knowles Show. So much suffrage. I hope we have time to get to it at the end of the show because everyone argues over Susan B. Anthony's legacy. Susan B. Anthony, more than any other woman, gave women the right to vote. She was the leading suffragette, and there's a major debate on the right and the left on who gets to own Susan B. Anthony, and I will give you the true answer to that. But first, losing your hair is terrible. Did you know that? 2 out of 3 guys will experience hair loss by the time they are 35. And this is something that really terrifies me because I'm not a huge hulking Adonis of a man. My poofy hair is one of my real perks, to keep sweet little Elisa interested in me. This brings us to Keeps, the easiest and most affordable way to keep the hair that you have. The FDA-approved products used to cost so much money, but now, thanks to Keeps, they are finally inexpensive and easy to obtain. For 5 minutes now, and starting at just $10 per month, you will never have to worry about hair loss again. Getting started is super easy. Signing up takes less than 5 minutes. I know guys just want to put off everything and procrastinate, not do it. Don't lose your hair. You can stop the process of hair loss, but you got to act now. Answer a few simple questions, snap some photos to complete your online doctor consultation. A licensed physician will review your information online and recommend the right treatment for you. Then it is shipped right to your door every 3 months. Keeps offers generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products out there. You may have tried them before, but never for this price. $10 to $35 a month, plus now you can get your first month free. One hell of a deal for keeping your hair. Guys, this is all about peace of mind. I have great peace of mind because I have Keeps, so I know that my hair is not going to just all fall out one day and then I'm going to lose my show and lose my wife and have a terrible life. If you suffer from hair loss, the last thing you need is to wait to see a doctor. With Keeps, there's finally a way to get the help that you need when you need it. For a limited time, receive your first month of treatment for free. Go to keeps.com/Knowles, Knowles. That is to receive your first month of treatment for free. Go to keeps.com/Knowles. Knowles. We will get to women's suffrage later. Right now, we need to talk about a whole other class of victim group. A major change happening in the NBA. A number of NBA teams are trying to drop the word owner from the phrase team owner. If you own an NBA team, you're an owner of an NBA team, right? But apparently, no, that's wrong, that's racist, you're not allowed to be that anymore. So the Philadelphia 76ers rebranded their owners as managing partners. Why are they doing this? Because they say owner is racist because slave owners owned slaves. So therefore, the word owner is ruined forever. You can't use the word owner, so they're managing partners. The trouble is, managing partner doesn't mean the same thing as owner. Businesses have managing partners who are not owners and owners who are not managing partners. The LA Clippers are calling their owners the chairman. So the majority stakeholder in the LA Clippers now is chairman. The reason that this is happening, one of the big causes of this, is Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors told the HBO sports show The Shop that he found the term racially insensitive and it's got to go. Here's the interview.
The fact that they still call people with those teams owners, when does that change?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
If you pay your money and own the team, what should you be called?
Owner.
You want to be an owner one day, right? you want to be called the owner when you buy your team?
I own my own. I like that word.
When your product is purely the labor of people, then owner sounds like something that is of a feudal nature.
You shouldn't say owner.
I agree.
When you think, what do you think you should say, Dre? CEO or chairman. When you think of a basketball team, or you should say majority shareholder.
There you go.
Something like that. But when you think of a basketball team, like nobody don't think of the Golden State Warriors and like think of that bridge. Like they think of the players that make that team. Which bridge? The bridge is on the front of your jersey? Exactly. You don't even know what the it's called. It's like,
So if that voice sounded familiar, by the way, from the interviewer, that was Jon Stewart. He has come out of his cabin in the woods from Daily Show retirement, and he's doing this interview. And he brings up the question. He says, the term owner is racist. So they bat around a few different ideas. They say, well, how about majority shareholder? Okay, I mean, a majority shareholder in a slave plantation is also pretty bad too, right? Is that term unacceptable? It's all about the term owner. And Jon Stewart's point is, if a business is only about someone else's labor, you shouldn't be an owner, because then it's like you own that person. So can a restaurant have an owner? A restaurant is primarily about other people's labor. It's about the waiters and the busboys and the kitchen runners and the cooks and the chef and the manager and the hostess and the cleaning crew. So are restaurants allowed to have owners now, or no, that's not anymore? Now you might say, well, a restaurant provides a physical product too. They provide food. So therefore it's not only about somebody else's labor. And basketball, basketball is just about the labor of the basketball players. Also, that isn't true. So basketball is primarily about entertainment. It's primarily about what the basketball players are doing. But there are a ton of tangibles that go along with it. You buy the jersey, you buy the sneakers, you buy the hot dogs at the stadium, you buy the beers, you buy the trading cards. There are a lot of very physical objects that go along with it that are, at least in part, owned by the owners of these teams. Even if it were true, though, let's say that basketball were only about the physical labor of others, and so you've got these team owners and they just own these basketball players. What about Hollywood? What about any other sort of entertainment field? Basketball is primarily about entertainment. You sit down and you watch a basketball game to be entertained. TV shows are also about entertainment. Movies are also about entertainment. Concerts are also about entertainment. Is it racist to call movie studio owners owners? Is it racist to call record label owners owners? No, obviously not. There are two issues that are at play here. There is one, historical ignorance, and two, creeping socialism. The historical ignorance is just over what the term owner means. Obviously, it's true, slave owners were referred to as owners. People who owned anything else for all of the history of mankind are also referred to as owners. It's not explicitly or even primarily or even frequently or really even ever used to refer to slave owners. This happened at Harvard and Yale just a few years ago. At Harvard and Yale, the earliest American colleges, they inherited from Oxford and Cambridge the term master to refer to the head of the residential colleges. So you have some deans and you have a master of the college, and that's sort of like the social head of the college. The term master comes from Oxford, from Cambridge. We use the term master all the time. When we use the word Mr. to refer to a stranger on the street, hello, Mr. Smith. Mr. is just a form of master. So we use that term. It has nothing to do with slavery. It predates slavery by centuries in the Oxford and Cambridge tradition, and yet student activists and political activists at Harvard and Yale said, no, the word master, it sounds kind of slavey. I know it has no relation to slavery whatsoever, but it just kind of sounds, it's the feels, like all my feels make it sound really slavey, so we have to get rid of it. And they did. They dropped those terms. So now they use the phrase head of college. I'm sure they're going to find some way to be offended by head of college too, and then they're going to change it again. That's the ignorance part. It's people don't really get what the word owner means, that the word owner doesn't come from slavery. But the other side of it, I think, is even more important, which is creeping socialism. It's not about the racism, it's about ownership itself. We're uncomfortable in this egalitarian society where socialism is becoming much more popular, where the majority of young Americans now are identifying as socialist. We're uncomfortable with private ownership itself. Just as a rule, whenever someone accuses you of racism, they're probably not talking about racism. Racism has become a tool of the left to silence people and to push forward their other ideas. Racism is rarely, if ever, actually about racism. So the question of whether owner is racist is not about racism, it's about ownership. So you have got people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, and I guess now the entire Democrat field just about, telling us that private property is bad, it's wrong, we need to take away private property. In the extreme case, we need socialism, we need socialist programs. That is the lie. And so people feel shame for owning private property. Why do you have the right to own something if that guy on the street doesn't have the right to own it? Why do I have the right to own my car when the bum drinking booze out of a plastic bottle on the street doesn't own a car? According to the radical egalitarians, there's something unfair about that. That's an example of social injustice. Actually, though, private property is great. Private property is one of the best things ever, and shared property is not that great. We are told in this culture that private property is bad and primitive, that in an advanced society we will give up some of our private ownership of property, and then we'll all just hold things in common, like the mythical people and the beautiful paradise that we envisioned before the social contract. That's what we are being told. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, gave a speech at Tulane University where he said that in the beginning we all just kept our property to ourselves and we all just did things for ourselves. But then when we became civilized, we realized we needed to do everything together. And we needed to surrender our ownership, and we needed to just kumbaya all together. The actual history of civilization is exactly the opposite. Primitive tribes are not the most selfish. They don't have the most private ownership. They're not the most capitalistic. Primitive tribes are the most socialistic. They don't really have concepts of private property. When you look at primitive tribes in Papua New Guinea or in the Amazon jungle or in historical examples, they don't really hold private property. They hold all the goods in common, and their economies don't really take off. They don't really produce very much. They don't enter into a state of advanced civilization. It doesn't grow society. Societies only begin to advance when they develop concepts of private property and when they develop concepts of government and law to protect that private property. And the reason for that is only when you have private property do you have any incentive to work, to produce, to till the land. This is true not just in the ancient civilizations or in the remote tribes in Papua New Guinea. This is true in American history. When the Mayflower sailed to America in 1620 and those early pilgrims got off the ship, they held their property in common. And you know what happened? They starved. They had a very terrible first winter. They had a very terrible second winter. It was only after they started to institute capitalist reforms that they had abundance. This is well attested to in the diaries of the governor of Plymouth, Governor Bradford. They decided instead of holding everything in common and trying to get everyone else to work for everyone else, they would divvy up the property. Governor Bradford wrote that at that time, when they were sharing all of the property, the young men felt that they had no reason to go out there and work for some other man's wife to be able to eat. They would just sit at home and everyone else would do the work, and then they would hopefully enjoy some of the fruits of the other person's labor. This is what happens in communist governments. Perhaps it starts out with good intentions. Usually it doesn't, but let's say that it did start out with good intentions. The trouble is in the system itself. In the system itself, if I'm just going to get the fruits of someone's labor, if we're all going to get the average, why would I ever work above the average? In fact, why would I ever work at the average amount of productivity? I'm going to try to work below the average amount of productivity so that I'm really profiting from somebody else's labor, because that's much easier and there's no difference in what I get to eat or the goods that I get to enjoy. So Governor Bradford then divided up all the property, and guess what happened? Plymouth Plantation flourished, and New England flourished, and America learned a very important lesson in those early years. The other side of private property is that it is implied by natural rights and natural law. So all the time now, when socialists are ranting about social justice and how we need to give up private property ownership, and we need to, what socialism is literally when the government takes control of the means of production and distribution in an economy. It's when they take away private property and private ownership. What we are told is that really it's a higher justice, it's human rights that call for us to take other people's property for ourselves. Actually, the opposite is true. Private property is a concept of the natural law and of natural rights. Our country is grounded in the idea of natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which John Locke described as the pursuit of property. Why is private property implied by natural rights and natural law? It's because it is a consequence of my liberty. So I have life, I have this life that I was given, and I can act freely in it. So I act freely and I work and I occupy certain places. And as a result of this, I have to be entitled to some profit for my work, my liberty. I have to be entitled to some of the fruits of my liberty, and this implies private property. What is the argument for taking away someone else's private property? That Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really wants it? That's not a great argument. That the world will end if we don't take away a lot of people's private property in 12 years? Not really backed by science like AOC wants it to be. They have no argument for this. When the left can't make an argument against this, they have to revert to what they always do, which is they cry racism. They say, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're selfish, gimme, gimme, gimme. That's what's really going on here in this debate. And by the way, we saw this in action yesterday, this concept, this frequent tool of the left to just accuse their opponents of racism when they don't have an argument. We saw it in an interview that Jared Kushner did on HBO over the question of whether birtherism, the idea that Barack Obama wasn't born in the US, whether birtherism is racist, and he totally bungled the answer.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she has called President Trump a racist. Have you ever seen him say or do anything that you would describe as racist or bigoted?
So the answer is no, absolutely not. You can't not be a racist for 69 years, then run for president and be a racist. And what I'll say is that when a lot of the Democrats call the president a racist, I think they're doing a disservice to people who suffer because of real racism in this country.
Was birtherism racist?
Look, I wasn't really involved in that.
I know you weren't. Was it racist?
Like I said, I wasn't involved in that.
I know you weren't. Was it racist?
Look, I know who the president is, and I have not seen anything in him that is racist. So again, I was not involved in that.
Did you wish he didn't do that?
Like I said, I was not involved in that. That was a long time ago.
The other issue that often gets brought up in this conversation is that he campaigned on banning Muslims. Would you describe that as religiously bigoted?
Look, I think that the president did his campaign the way he did his campaign.
He did,
and I think
but you wish he didn't. Do you wish he didn't make that speech?
I think he's here today, and I think he's doing a lot of great things for the country, and that's what I'm proud of.
Totally bungled it. I like Jared Kushner, but this was not a good answer in any case. The answer to the question, is birtherism racist, is obviously no. It's not racist. The answer on the Muslim ban, by the way, is that Barack Obama limited travel from many of the countries that Donald Trump did. And his ban, the travel restrictions, were not exclusively against Muslim-majority countries. And also, it was a ban against countries that were failed states that we couldn't ensure the legitimacy of the people who were coming over here. So that's simply answered. And the question of birtherism is simply answered, too. Birtherism is not racist. Where does birtherism come from? The idea that Barack Obama wasn't born here. It comes from Barack Obama himself. Barack Obama's literary agent wrote in one of the early promotions for Barack Obama as a published writer that he was born in Kenya. This is what he wrote. Barack Obama, the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review, was born in Kenya and raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. The son of an American anthropologist and a Kenyan finance minister, he attended Columbia University and worked as a financial journalist and editor for a Business International Corporation. And then it goes on. It says it very clearly. He was born in Kenya. Now, the guy says this was a mistake. We have every reason to believe it was a mistake, but it was a mistake that came from Barack Obama and his literary agent, and it was distributed widely. Why else did people think Barack Obama wasn't born here? They thought that because he doesn't speak like an American. He doesn't speak in the sort of ideas that are traditionally American ideas. He very publicly rejected American exceptionalism. He was asked if he believed in American exceptionalism, and he said, yeah, sure, I believe in it, just the way that the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism, which belies a fundamental understanding of American exceptionalism. If every country is exceptional, then no country is exceptional. And the idea of American exceptionalism is that America, by virtue of her unique development and foundation and role in the world, is unique. It's almost tautological. It's just a very basic observation that America, unlike every other country on earth, is exceptional. Not to say it's the greatest thing in the whole history of the world, though it is the greatest nation in the history of the world. It simply says it is the exception to nations, not the rule. And when you look at the unique founding of America, the unique development, Obviously, that is true. I think he was probably the first major presidential candidate ever to reject American exceptionalism. He also described Muslim prayers in the evening as one of the prettiest sounds on earth. That's a little strange. That's not totally in keeping with traditional American views of religion and beauty. It's a foreign idea. Why else? He grew up abroad. He did grow up largely in Indonesia. Why else? He palled around with Marxists like Frank Marshall Davis, and he credited those Marxists as his mentors. Why else? He palled around with domestic terrorists like Bill Ayers. He launched his political campaign in the living room of Bill Ayers. Why else? Because his ideas were un-American. Also, it doesn't even make sense that birtherism would be racist. The idea that Barack Obama wasn't born in this country because he was black, is that what birtherism is? Because there are a lot of black people in America. Black people have been in America for centuries. That part wouldn't even, because somebody's black, they wouldn't be born in America. Black people are 12% of the American population. No, it was because he seemed foreign, and because when he was young, his publisher said that or his literary agent rather, said that he was not born in America, and because he spoke like someone who is not American. Birtherism had other problems than this. First of all, there's not much evidence for it other than what his literary agent said decades ago. And the other major problem with birtherism, which is why I never took the controversy seriously at all, is that even if Barack Obama had been born in some other place, he still would be a natural-born citizen because he was a citizen upon his birth. Natural just means from birth. So because his mother was a U.S. citizen, he was naturally born a U.S. citizen. So it didn't even really matter. Kushner should have just said this. Yeah, birtherism wasn't racist. Might have been stupid, it might have been foolish. It was, by the way, based on Barack Obama's own literary agent, but sure, it turned out it wasn't true. Okay. It's not racist. None of that shows that it's racist. If everything is racist, nothing is racist. We should not give the left an inch. We should not accept their premises. A good example of how Kushner should have responded to this came by way of Steven Crowder yesterday, because you know there's this Vox journalist who's trying to get Crowder banned from YouTube for making jokes, and YouTube is taking this apparently seriously. They're actively investigating Crowder. They want to get rid of his channel. I think his channel has like 4 million subscribers or something. And this jerk from Vox, this total fake victim punk named Carlos Maza, made a video yesterday explaining why we need to censor Crowder. Here he is.
A ton of people have talked about this way before I did, and have experienced it way worse than I have. YouTube is dominated by alt-right monsters who use the platform to target their critics and make their lives miserable. It's been happening for a long time. It's been happening since way before me. The response from people who've experienced this is, yeah, I agree. To hell with YouTube. I can't believe they're branding themselves as Pride allies. And I heard you have Raymond Brown coming up later on the show. I hope you ask him what it's like to make basically corporate propaganda for a company that doesn't care about queer people.
I want to stop it right there, because did you hear the word he said at the end? He said that YouTube doesn't care about people who are making fun of queer people. And he's using the word queer people as his own identity. I mean, the guy's Twitter handle is gay wonk. So he's saying, we are queer people and it's wrong to make fun of us. Well, how did Steven Crowder make fun of queer people? He called them queer. He used the very word that they used to describe themselves. He used the very word that this guy used to describe himself. But I guess when he says it, it's okay, and when Steven Crowder says it, it's not okay. And why is that? Because he doesn't like Steven Crowder, and he wants Steven Crowder to shut up because Steven Crowder is a conservative. So he will baselessly smear Steven Crowder as some sort of neo-Nazi. He's using the term alt-right. Alt-right used to have a meaning. Alt-right referred to a political movement, a very small political movement, that is racially essential, racially essentialist. And so it prioritizes race above all other political questions and concerns. It is largely materialist. It's a largely atheistic movement. Conservatives, mainstream conservatives, reject the premises of that movement entirely. This guy, totally baselessly smearing Crowder, is that. Now, then he goes on with his suggestions for YouTube.
The response from critics, people who love Steven Crowder, have been that I'm a fascist and I'm an NBC plant trying to take down a competitor, which is like so dumb. I don't know what to say to it. But it's meant to distract from the reality, which is that Steven Crowder is not the problem. Alex Jones isn't the problem. These individual actors are not the problem. They are symptoms and the product of YouTube's design, which is meant to reward the most inflammatory, bigoted, and engaging performers. Steven Crowder is YouTube's ideal creator. He makes cheap, long content that tons of people watch and subscribe to. He sells shirts on the platform that say socialism is for fags, which YouTube continues to allow. He is what an ideal YouTube creator looks like. And YouTube's branding about caring about queer people is meant to distract advertisers from the fact that they have no handle on their platform, and that people who run ads on YouTube are going to end up having their ads appear on videos with hate speech and bigoted harassment of queer people and marginalized communities.
So what he just said about Steven Crowder's shirts is also technically not true, because the shirt says that socialism is for figs. And instead of an A, it's a little picture of a fig. And coincidentally, Che Guevara, who's pictured on the shirt, was killed in a town called Higuera, which means the fig tree. So anyway, I'm quibbling over a minor point here. But the long story short is this guy's a whiny little liar, and he's a fake victim, because he refers to marginalized communities. There's no more marginalized community on social media than conservatives. Conservatives are regularly demonetized, shut down, censored, deplatformed, kicked off. And by the way, if we're trying to compare the marginalization of conservatives on social media to queer people, to use Carlos Maza's term, conservatives regularly being deplatformed, regularly being kicked off social media. This very show gets censored not infrequently. I have been kicked off of Twitter for various periods of time. That's conservatives. In terms of gay people and LGBT, LMNOP, the term Pride Month has been trending for 3 consecutive days on Twitter. Not only are queer people, to use his term, not marginalized on social media, they are celebrated every day. Fine by me, but there's no comparison here. Now, we'll get to Crowder's apology in a second, but first I've got to say about Facebook and YouTube. And we've got a whole lot more to get to. We've got to get to the funniest story that I've read in the news in many months about how a weird, kinky sexual meetup turned into assault and robbery. And we will have to get to Susan B. Anthony and uncovering whether the left or right can accurately claim her. But go to dailywire.com if you want it. $10 a month, $100 for an annual membership. You get me, you get the Andrew Klavan Show, you get the Ben Shapiro Show, you get the Matt Walsh Show. You get to ask questions in the mailbag coming up on Thursday. You get to ask questions backstage. You get everything, but you get the Leftist Tears tumbler. And this is very, very important. You're going to... that's really good. I'm really proud of how delicious the Leftist Tears tumbler tastes. I just take a lot of pride in it. I think we should all be proud of how delicious Leftist Tears tumblers are. If you want to be proud of salty Leftist Tears, go to dailywire.com. We'll be right back.